Hello, ladies, gentlemen, and deceased. It is I am Mighty Sophia here to break down for you guys the latest episode of The Walking Dead. We are going the distance, so spoiler alert. Before we dive into the mad thick of things, as I will be bearing all in this review, and without further ado, let us get into the madness, shall we? Though I must say, I'm going to do my best with this review. I pretty much spent the entire day watching John Wick, the Oscars, and then this episode, so it has been quite a heavy day of television and film and things of that nature. I've got a lot swimming in my mind, lots of emotions, lots of thoughts, but I really enjoyed this week's episode, and I think that it was the perfect change of pace and a good organic step in a fresh direction for the group, because I sense that we're not just headed for yet another gated community of woe and despair and maliciousness, or, well, maybe at least not off the bat. But I read a couple of reviews about this episode prior to filming my own review, just because I'm curious to kind of touch base with the broader fan community and kind of get the gist of, you know, what other people are thinking as well. And I totally agree with this, and this really hits the nail right on the head for me. There are some reviewers that are saying that this episode of The Walking Dead felt a lot like Telltale Games' version of The Walking Dead, wherein you're faced with all of these difficult decisions. Often you'll have like 3 or 4 options that you have to choose from, choosing to build certain alliances, to take things in a certain direction. And it's, yeah, it was a very fascinating ride, and really what we got to see especially was the war within Rick himself and the way that's externalized through how he interacts with others. What we got to see a lot of last week was the characters grappling with this crisis of, what is the point? We are survivors, but what then? For what? Why do we even endure? Why do we put forth this effort? And so the battle largely was waged on this internal field. And now that we are confronted with new characters, new environments, new possibilities, they have to pit that hope against their survivalist instincts, which by and large have told them up to this point that there's pretty much nobody they can trust except their family. And that's something that Rick really seems to vouch for. And there's been an interesting kind of shift in the dynamic of the group as we see that it is no longer simply the Ricktatorship, which, you know, ironically, we kind of shifted back into that once the group all came together. Rick kind of took charge and really helped unify everyone after all of the insanities that they endured and the fall of the prison and Terminus and everything. But we see now that Michonne has come to have a very powerful voice in the things that transpire from here on out, the places that they go, the decisions that they make. We see that Rick is really fighting against the idea of some nebulous Alexandria. What is that to him? What is that place to anyone? Because with all that they've experienced, you know, family is everything. And Rick is so adamant that family isn't just tied into a home, a geographical location. On the other hand, Michonne is quite adamant that they can't simply keep going. Yes, it's like Rick had said, they pretend to be dead so that ultimately they can find life. Like, we are the Walking Dead. But Michonne doesn't want to just keep on walking. And I think that deep down, none of them really do, but that's what they've come to trust and understand as this is the way of things. Anything otherwise seems unnatural, which makes the arrival of someone like Aaron so incredibly nerve-wracking and suspicious, and at every angle everything feels like a trap. And that's really the way that things feel a lot of the time in Telltale Games, The Walking Dead, which I highly encourage you to play. If you love the show, you will love the game all the more. Never before has a game wrecked my emotions on such a profound level and just gotten beneath my skin. So I implore you, if you're looking to expand your experience of this apocalyptic universe, do play Telltale Games, The Walking Dead. You will not be sorry. I do have a couple of reviews from that. I forget how many episodes I actually tackled. It might just be 1 or 2, but it's really good. Anyway, it's a story-based game. And we get to see a lot of these strategic decisions that Rick tries to make, and they're quite literally faced with this fork in the road when Aaron, for the sake of his group, which really is just himself and his boyfriend or significant other Eric, so basically we see that Aaron is trying to kind of protect the community at large, and yet they still want to recruit people, and so there's this sort of like, the extent to which he withholds information is quite a bit problematic to Rick, who really puts Aaron to the test up until the moment that they arrive at the pearly gates with the beautiful sunrise, and you know, it all feels so idyllic, and what a hell of a note to leave off on. I'm just saying, that is disconcerting as all get out, and I don't like it, but we could just linger in the beauty of this moment. Not everything has to end on a cliffhanger of doom, with us dangling over the edge of some godforsaken precipice. Not everything, but, so Aaron initially tells them, okay, the way that you can get there is on road 16 or whatever it was. And he said that they had already cleared that path and that it was all set. But for Rick, it's like, I'm not feeling it so much. He wants to go on road 23, I believe, if I'm getting the numbers correct. Close enough, I say. But he is willing to risk the lives and safety of his group in order to find their way to figure out if this really is a viable option, somewhere they can truly stay. And I can't blame him a single bit. I mean, I really sympathize with just about everybody in the group this week. And what was good too was there wasn't some big blowout, like, civil war within the group where everyone's like, oh, we can't do this, we have to pull back, and oh, we have to do this, and so I think it was interesting to see kind of the nuances of how everyone feels that going in this direction is inevitable, because otherwise they're stuck in the barn that smells like horse shit, according to Daryl. You know, valid opinion. Who would want to stay in the stank zone? I don't think I would. So it's almost as if this is fated, in a sense, but to see how everybody contends with this reality and how Rick ultimately puts all of them in danger to go down this path, and then there's the freaking bloodbath on Highway 666, you know, it was real bad there. It's been a long time since we've really had a sense of urgency, even with encounters and skirmishes with the walkers too. Because the group knows exactly how to handle this kind of foe, and so it's putting it in a different kind of context, different array of circumstances that really makes those encounters with the dead truly scary to us as an audience, because at this point we are quite seasoned professionals in watching things get dead in very grotesque and ridiculous ways, and we're like, yep, stab, next, you know, just kind of a conveyor belt of death, and yet with the group going down this road and the blood splattering all over the glass and bodies rolling and freaking limbs sticking out of the hood, and like, I mean, it was quite visceral. I mean, very much a physical metaphor of how Rick's resistance to this hope is like pulling them back, essentially. They're trying to plow forward down this uncleared path, the path of doubt, if you will, of skepticism, and they put themselves in even further danger. it does remind me very much of the situations that the Walking Dead game puts you in, where you have to choose, am I going to go this way, am I going to go that way, am I going to build trust with this person, and am I going to build trust with that person, you know, those kinds of situations. And that makes for a very exciting and gripping and dynamic episode, I think. It was cool, especially to see the really intense focus on Rick and Michonne, how the power in the group has shifted, and how everyone really has bonded together to the point that it's not all about these blowout arguments. We even got to see Rosita and Abraham kind of reconcile with one another, and, you know, he asks if she was concerned that he was going to hurt her after DC fell apart, and then we see that when they're all driving together to Alexandria, they see the Washington Monument in the distance, and that's kind of a point of reconciliation and coming back together in earnest for Rosita and Abraham after everything that transpired. And so it really is so comforting to see how this family has emerged, and how Judith's status within the group is becoming an issue as well. We really see that desperation in the scene in the barn with Aaron and Rick and Judith, and Rick is over with his screaming, crying baby, and he's trying to mash up nuts, whereas Aaron, so many A names, Aaron is quite just offering him his applesauce, and they have this whole interesting discussion when Rick's like, you first, wherein we get a little bit of insight into Aaron's background and how his parents tried to force him to become more manly by making him eat foods that he didn't want to eat, and how that was a really bad emotional trigger for him, but he made that sacrifice in order to try to find some level of understanding and trust with this group to bring them forward. And then, you know, at the end, after the explosive zombie blowout in the woods, and Rick and Michonne and everybody is reunited with Aaron and Glenn and all that craziness, and Aaron's like, you can lock me back up now if you want, and Rick's like, there's no time. There's no time for this. We are in the thick of this. This is inevitable. It's all about how they approach this place, because when you think about it, what else would they do? Would they have, if they had not encountered Aaron and Eric, and if they hadn't been followed and pursued by these strangers in the woods, where would they be? What would they do? I mean, this presents them with an opportunity to move forward with this unity and this newfound sense of purpose that they kind of got to experience during that storm, pushing back against the walkers that were pushing in, and really feeling themselves and their mortality and their life and vitality, you know? Mortality versus vitality, you know? That's kind of a cool thing. Anyway, so I really enjoyed the episode in that regard. We didn't get a ton of focus on the minor characters. A lot of it did deal with, like, Rick and Michonne, and I'm just happy to see that characters are not, or they at least haven't been lately, making as many, like, arbitrarily stupid decisions like we've seen in the past, the kind that get people killed in order to just move the plot forward, and that doesn't really seem to be something that the writers are falling back on, or at least it seems like in the past they kind of have, like, oh, well, it's about that time where somebody just kind of slips up out of nowhere, and then things go and escalate and become terrible. But so far, we see that people have, you know, got good heads on their shoulders despite everything, and that's something that Aaron sees and wants to bring into his sphere, his community, and it all seems too good to be true. I mean, when we get to that close-up scene of just Rick's eyes as he is listening to the sound of playing children. And I was joking with my brother when we were watching, and I was like, what do you want to bet? He's gonna, like, look up. We see him, like, you know, his gaze go up, and then camera switches, and there's, like, speakers on the gates, and they're trying to project this sense of, like, come one, come all, come be in our happy, family-friendly, you know, G-rated happiness. But I don't know. I don't know what to expect at this point, but I don't think it's just going to be another Woodbury, or it's going to be another Terminus. I know that bad things are coming. Inevitably, there is going to be some source of conflict. And I'm not sure what. If anything, there will at least be some conflict between Rick's beard and a razor, because that man is becoming a man bush. And I don't know how I feel about that. He's looking more and more Jesus-like by the day. But, yeah, that is really, really beside the point in the grand scheme of things. So bear with me. But thank you guys so much for watching my review. As always, please comment below if there's anything that I forgot to or failed to specifically address in this episode. But yeah, what did you guys think? I really thought that it was very exciting, intense. And I was nervous. There was a lot that was, very necessarily visceral. It's great to see Rick stand up and hold his own, but then also reach these compromises and actually be willing to experience hope, and to be able to do so for Judith, because as a father, he is quite adamant that he is equipped to and capable of providing for his children. But it appears that Michonne has a bit more insight into that than even he does. And they've actually kind of switched places in a lot of ways. Rick is like, the road is where it's at. And Michonne's like, can we not? Can we actually build a life? Can we have a place where we are settled, a place to protect, to be together? And I totally understand that. It's just fascinating to see that reversal and how they were in such different places when they all first encountered each other in the prison. It's going to be a really great ride from here. I'm very excited for the rest of the season. So yeah, take it to the comments. I will meet you guys there. Thank you for watching again. And as always, I will be back before you know it.
Last night I dreamt that some